So I was sat back relaxing and enjoying my day, and I noticed a comment, one that piqued my interest enough to make an entire video on it. No, it was not an abusive comment from people like Cthulhu, nor was it a comment referring to this clip from a video by Suit Yourself.
Oh my god! Salutations.
Okay. Amazing. Although I do recall many years ago when he first introduced my avatar into his particular animated style of content, he in fact gave me the file, because I was considering using it for full-time content. I might still use something of that for my gaming channel perhaps, but we will see. I guess it depends on how well I do over there. Instead, the comment was something else and focused on a different topic entirely, although I have covered and given opinions on each of these individual instances within the questions asked. But due to the nature of the end of this entire comment, I'm going to devote an entire video to it, like I earlier said. So the comment comes from Mr. Obvious. Sweet. Omegon, on your opinion of sex offenders, what about people falsely accused? Especially in this day and age, plus the bias against men. Think carefully. So demanding. I like it. Now, to give my opinion on those falsely accused, I think it right I first of all clarify my opinion on sex offenders. To do so, I'm going to pull rank and declare myself Captain Obvious. Mr. Obvious. So, a sex offender is somebody that has crossed the line from a sexual attraction to somebody below the legal age in the country they're in, and either engaged with sexual activity with a child, or a minor. Some people would argue teenagers are not children, I would just say they're all children, or attempted to engage in sexual activity with a child. Those people are well known to be people normally within someone's family. It is well known that is quite common. Another very common area would be employment. And I mean this specifically in the context of teachers and or doctors. Now doctors, some doctors have an excuse because of the nature of their profession. However, some doctors have historically been proven to have crossed the line so that they could then abuse a child. My opinion on paedophiles, those who are sexually attracted to minors, is quite simple. Get help, please, before you cross the line. You can tell me you're a virtuous paedophile. That means nothing to me. And I'm very much aware of the Tumblr stuff, where they are, I believe, trying to get approved for an app on the Apple Store, and by doing so, they've removed all NSFW content from their site, which I believe sparked some map-related commentary. I'll link a related video in the description, because I just can't be bothered to go through all of that Tumblr. Although I will say now, it is surprising to me it took Tumblr this long to take away the safe space for maps. And for those who don't know, minor attracted person. I know, it's more politically correct than to say pedofucking-phile. With sex offenders, my opinion is, once you are convicted of a sex offence, and of course depending on the severity of it, will depend on how long you should be on the sex offenders register. If you've actually engaged in sexual activity with a minor or a child, which is both, you belong on it for the rest of your life. There are certain lines and inconsistencies in prosecution that we know about. I certainly covered one with a New York teacher. She engaged in sexual activity with a student, and she was put on the register for 10 years. But that's it. In fact, she got to keep her license, which absolutely baffles me. Then there are other cases where you have another teacher, a male teacher, in this country, my country, the United Kingdom, who ran away with a 15-year-old girl. He went to prison and will undoubtedly be on the register for the rest of his life, and rightly so. This standard is one of those things I believe everyone should adhere to, but unfortunately the age of consent and the culture as well determines a lot about how we treat sex offenders. However, one very consistent view on sex offenders, they are second from bottom in the prison ladder. The only people that are beneath them, who happen to also be sex offenders, are the parents that tried to sell their children into prostitution or engaged in sexually abusing their children themselves. There is a unique place in hell for those people. I'm not going to quote Book Shepherd here for that, because he already included paedophiles and sex offenders, and those that talk at the cinema. Okay, I've just done it. Woo! I know, I'm so peng. Another rather consistent view I've held with those that are convicted of sex offences. I find it very hard to believe they can truly be rehabilitated. They have violated children and will be named, publicly shamed and vilified, tarred, feathered and abused for the rest of their lives. Unless, of course, people think for some reason they should be entitled to protection, which baffles me beyond belief. Now, on the subject of those falsely accused, I have firmly remained in the position of they should retain anonymity until a conviction is either given, or they are proven innocent, or not guilty. Those falsely accused are dragged through the mud, and when they are finally proven innocent, they typically do not get a fair share of the publicity, because it is far more interesting to sensationalise them being accused of committing the crime, which I believe is quite unfair of the media to do so. They, of course, are well within their rights to publish whatever they want to get the most views, but to only print those that show someone being accused of a sex offence as opposed to showing them being proven innocent and laying it all out there, and hopefully then the subsequent case against the person that falsely accused in the first place, who should of course remain anonymous until convicted, if at all. Society doesn't treat sex offenders well, because they are the lowest of the low. Those falsely accused, though, have to live with a stigma that is just impossible to shake. Many of them turn to alcohol, drugs and suicide, because they are not treated fairly or given a fair shot. I would be a truly shit skeptic if I stood on a podium and said, "You're guilty because someone said you're guilty." I've never cared for listen and believe, and I have on many occasions on this channel waited until evidence came out before giving an opinion, and then, when I had to, provided you with the information so you could make your own decision. I have my opinions. There have been a number of cases that have been overturned, very high-profile cases. Ched Evans in this country, one of the most high-profile cases of somebody who had a promising career as a football player, soccer to you Americans, hi Americans, spent years in prison, and then managed to prove his innocence. But by then his name had been dragged through the mud, and when he was found innocent, in the appeal, there was barely a mention of it anywhere. But thankfully, he was able to rebuild his somewhat promising career, who, upon serving his time in prison and of course the successful appeal, was playing for Sheffield United again, the team he had played for before he went to prison. I still haven't forgiven Jessica Ennis for never actually publicly saying sorry to him, because she jumped on that bandwagon, and of course at the time he had in fact been in prison. So when there were talks and rumours of him being re-signed to their club, she said if they had signed him, she wanted her name removed from one of the stands. A petition was even signed, in fact, by over 150,000 people to stop him going back. Thankfully, the appeal changed everything, and now he is currently on loan with Fleetwood Town in League One. He lost 5 years of a career because of a false allegation of a sex offence, and that was because of evidence that was omitted, evidence that was actually, as we now know, valuable. In this day and age, as you have asked in your question, moral hysteria has taken precedent over reason. Due process is being weakened. You have it in America with Title IX and the Dear Colleague letter, which I have spoken of on many, many occasions. Thankfully, that Dear Colleague letter is being removed. Due process and innocence until proven guilty should always take precedent over moral hysteria, which, based on how it comes about, is nothing more than a weak tactic to try and influence others in assigning guilt and declaring someone else a victim for whatever points they think they get from it. Not everyone can turn it into something lucrative, like Emma Sulkowitz. There is, as you mention, a bias against men. They are publicly shamed into oblivion, and this is wrong. It is ridiculous in the courts that they are continually made an example out of, But whenever a female, as we have noted a number of times on this channel, has been proven to be guilty of having sex with a minor, which is not sex with a minor, it is a sex offence, they have then been declared mentally unstable, which is the reason why they committed the crime, or because they were weakened, or bribed or blackmailed by other students, because they themselves engaged in activity with a kid who then told the friends, who then tried to blackmail her into having sex with them, because apparently, even though she crossed the line once, the blackmail was what it took to get her to fuck them too. Of course, in the meantime, she's mentally unstable, and so are the other teachers that have abused their position. It is inconsistent, and it is sickening, and I think that needs to be addressed. I hope what I have said answers your questions. I have thought about this carefully. I hope you and everyone else have a lovely Monday, and thank you very much for listening.